Now we're going to move from the top 50 on Forbes list to perhaps the top 1 on the Farmers Organization. Dr. Theo Jager is president of the World Farmers Organization and former president of the Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions and of the Pan-African Farmers Union. He's also chairman of the board of Agri All Africa, a board member of FANPAN, and serves on the board of Agri Limpopo, where he is responsible for land reform, transformation, farmer development, and Africa liaison since 2004. He has farmed in South Africa since 1997 with timber and subtropical fruits, and I have to mention them because he farms avocados and mangoes, among my favorites, as well as macadamia nuts, and also keeps goats. He's associated with curried goat from Jamaica. Thank you so much. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. 7 years ago, when I first took up a responsibility in farmers' politics, I had this ambition to visit more farms than conferences and to talk more to farmers than to agricultural experts. I dismally failed, but at least I'm still trying. And while failing, I at least try to talk about the visits to farms when I get to conferences. I was invited to this amazing farm in Africa, which unfortunately no longer exists because of conflict between the partners. When I was invited, I dressed in my farm clothes, but I was taken to the 5th floor of a building in a CBD, where a farmer sat in a low light environment with a number of screens in front of him. And he showed us these 2 monitors are the information that comes from the drones on the farm. And they started up with first light on that morning and flew over the farm, sending data back to this operations room. There's no one on the farm, he said. All 3 of these drones reported a problem of stress on a 2.5 hectares field of beetroot. And the system advised that there's a 92% chance that this stress, which occurred on 2.2 square meters, might be related to insects. And the system also suggested that another drone should fly much lower to confirm. And this farmer only had to override the decision or the suggestion, which he did not do within the limited time span. So the 4th drone flew and confirmed. And the system suggested that it should be sprayed with the insecticide. And because he did nothing, one of the drones linked up with a 1-liter tank of pesticide and a little spray bar and sprayed only that 2.2 square meters. When we went out to the farm, and we were the only humans there, he showed us that the data which came from the moisture meters in the fields proposed that those 2 fields which were planted should not be irrigated today, still wet enough. The second 2 fields should be disked. They were already plowed 2 weeks ago before the rain. The next 2 fields should now be plowed today. And the next 2 fields should be left alone, too wet. And because he did nothing, this is what happened. When we reached the farm, tractors without drivers were actually disking. And I went onto the field, I picked up a stick, and I put it in the way of one of the tractors. And I walked out. And when I reached the farmer, he showed me that he received an SMS on his tablet saying, unknown obstacle in the way. But that tractor stopped about 2 meters from the stick, and after a minute switched off its engine. So I went in again, removed the stick, the engine started up again, and the tractor continued. But this time he sent an SMS to say, there's a spare part that is running at a few degrees higher temperature than it should. Something is going to break here. The suggestion is, and he had only a few seconds to respond, this tractor should be relieved of duty and go to the workshop. And he did. It hooked off the implement. Another tractor came around the corner, filled itself up with diesel and oil, and hooked the same implement and went on exactly where the previous one stopped. And I said to this farmer, this is the stuff horror movies are being made of. It means in 5 or 10 years from now, there will no longer be someone like me farming with my hands. And he said, no, someone like you will have smaller fingers to press small buttons on smartphones. Things are changing. And I said to him, so when I misjudge or miscalculate, I pay a price on my farm. How can I trust the system? His answer was, you are on the wrong side of 50 to understand blockchain. Now I am on the wrong side of 50. But it made me read about it. And I realized that we did nothing wrong to be managed out of the chain. We did everything right. It's just the nature of the chain has changed. And if you cannot keep up to the cutting edge of new technology in this fourth industrial revolution, you will not remain in business. But what does it say to us, the farmers from Africa, of which the vast majority are smallholders? Where does that leave us? We have said a few times in discussions here at the Brussels briefings that Africa has everything money cannot buy: the weather, the land, the water, the people. What we lack are the stuff which you can bring about through investment: knowledge and expertise, experience, financing. Africa got more than €1 trillion in development aid for agriculture over the last 18 years. And we cannot really show the dent we've made with it. We need the credibility to attract the investment. Capital is as shy as a deer. You scare it and it runs. And we need to be able to trace what happened where and by whom. Why? Africa's agriculture does not grow and does not lure the investment it should because of a lack of trust. And if anything, as farmers, we have high hopes that blockchain and the incorruptible part of that can bring about change on the kind of governance which is needed to lure investment. Because if you look at the history of Africa's interaction with the previous industrial revolutions, especially on communications technology, the first one when the Morse code was introduced, it was also introduced to Africa. The second industrial revolution, when the telephone was developed, we kind of missed that in the largest part. It came to our cities, but even until today, we've never had the landlines which covers the other continents. Then came the third one, mobile phones. And today, very few smallholder farmers do not at least have access to mobile technology. And going forward into the smartphone, I don't know why they still call this thing a phone. It is as good as calling your latest model Audi a cigarette lighter on wheels. It has that function too, but it is so much more. And although my generation of farmers do not really use all the functionalities on this stuff, there's a new generation of young farmers out there in Africa who not only understand it, but they love it, and they are taking it to new horizons. With blockchain, we can bring the uncorruptible flow of information and data into our value chains, which means from the input providers, from the financiers, and very, very important too, the crop insurers, those whose businesses are built on data, right through the production system and down the value chain, the processing, the logistics, the chain stores, up to the consumers, for whom labeling becomes more and more important. You can bring trust into the system. And this trust is not only built on one dimension of it, but on the complete picture. On this farm I visited, I've noticed how similar machines elsewhere in the world, on the opposite side of the world, could also learn from what happened on their fields and share it with each other, all other similar machines in the world, much faster than what any human could do. But for me as a farmer, this is broadly a schematic presentation of how our brains work. The farmer wakes up in the morning, the first thing in your mind is risk. Which risks am I being exposed to today, and how do I manage those risks? Weather risks, resource risks, economic risks, prices, markets, etc. Tariffs, labor risks, locational risks, the biological risks, health risks, financial risks, policy and political risks, infrastructure risks. And each one of these needs to be considered and managed. Now, can you imagine what immutable data can do in the management of those if it could be fed back to me and in a dashboard style on my smartphone or my tablet? On this particular farm, when I asked, why beetroot? How obscure. I've never seen beetroot in this district. Why did you plant beetroot here? He said, because the system proposed beetroot. Given the availability of beetroot at a certain time on the markets, the availability of logistics, and the prices in that time of the year on the markets. Because on my farm, usually, it would have been the agent selling the seeds that needed to convince me. And I had no way to check the data on which he proposed this. You always have it in the back of your mind that he has a surplus of this kind of seeds. He has not reached his targets, and he need to find a few farmers to buy this particular variety of seeds. But as it was said before, and this is for us very important, this is not, blockchain is not to be seen in isolation of the rest of the elements of the fourth industrial revolution. Blockchain goes with Internet of Things, big data, robotics, artificial intelligence, shaping the farmer of tomorrow and the production system of tomorrow. Which means that we are moving from business intelligence, where as a farmer you had to see how complete could you have your set of data on which you took a management decision, to business analytics, to trust the system and be sure that all relevant data has been considered in taking you to a decision. Moving from where you decide to do something to where you decide to override a decision. You need a decision not to do something. Now, traditionally in financing, a farmer takes his land, title deed, to a bank as security to have a loan, to borrow money, to pay for his inputs. This model has not worked well in Africa. There are actually only 4 countries in Africa where this model is efficient. South Africa, Namibia, pockets of Botswana, and pockets of Zambia. The rest of Africa, very little free title deeds on agricultural land. So there's no collateral, which means lack of financing, lack of investment. For us as farmers, it's very important that blockchain technology brings a different dimension to that, where you can actually use offtake agreements along with crop insurance to do value chain financing. It is possible when you can trust all the data in the value chain, where an offtake contract can serve as collateral given that you can really measure the inputs and the actions in every step of the production process and also downstream, follow the stream of money. We have piloted that in Arusha when I was still with Sakao, with the assistance of a few development aid partners. Only thing which we did more than only the bare value chain financing itself was we've set up a little collateral fund as a resort for first risk. If everything would have gone wrong in this pilot project, we could have gone to that collateral fund. You see, no matter how you do your calculations, when you use an offtake agreement as collateral, you need an own contribution of at least 30% if you are lucky. And much of it depends on the integrity of the crop insurance, managing the risk of an act of God. And that is what the smallholders in Africa do not have. They do not have that own contribution. What we did in Arusha is we went to 5 input providers, companies in the space of fertilizers and agrochemicals, mechanization, diesel, and seed. And we asked them each to keep 6% of their turnover on this project into the pool, a portion of their profit. And when we honor our offtake agreement, they would also have that final 6% payment. And the 5 times 6% gave us the 30% own contribution. What we got as a freebie, did not budget on that, and it worked wonderfully, was that we had excellent extension services because a portion of their money was still in the soil. So we had visits every second week from the fertilizer company, but the seed company was there every week to look after their interests. And the blockchain technology only enhances the trustability of this kind of financing. We cannot wait for politics to change the title deed paradigm in Africa. We see, as farmers, we see blockchain as shortcutting that route. You may say, how feasible given the current paradigm of smallholder farming? You know, everything a smallholder cannot do because he's too small can be done in a cooperative. 100 or 200 smallholders clustered under one umbrella becomes bankable and becomes insurable. Just saying that with my selfish hat as a farmer's leader who's in the business of organizing farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jager. I feared, as you progress with the story of the drone, that you are going to conclude with saying that there is no need for human at all anywhere on the farm. So I'm happy that there's still a place for us. But I want to thank you so much and to recall that in this morning's discussion and as we're progressing now, one of the principles that keeps coming up is that of trust. We've heard you talk about immutable data, uncorruptible flow of information. That again is a continuation of one of the principles on which by which we need to be guided as we look at that in terms of the possibilities and the prospects, but also the potential for issues. I want to thank you for that. And as you spoke, in my mind, I was thinking, how do we get or small farmers in all countries to make the leap. And I think that you have been leading us down that path. So I thank you so much.